Hi everyone, this is part of the Debaters Council series where we break down motions at recently held tournaments so it becomes easier for teams to comprehend motions and do better in the future. I'm Shakeeb. I was a debater for Wesley College and I am the incoming coach of Mahamaya College. Today I'm going to be looking at the motion and breaking down the motion, the quarterfinals motion of APIIT 2024. Before I get into reading the motion, we have an Infoslide, and the Infoslide reads, a technology exists to quantify or measure one's partner's love for them. 0% shows that there is no love at all, while 100% shows the utmost sincere and loyal love, right? And the motion reads, this house, as a person in a long and committed relationship, would use this technology. So I'm going to be first looking at what kind of motion and where this debate should go. Two, I'm looking at the potential, the perfect setup for prop and op. And three and four, I'm going to be looking at potential arguments that could be made for prop and op. First off, what kind of debate is this motion? Is it a policy motion? Is it a principle motion? When you say this house as, it insinuates that this motion is an actor motion, which means an actor motion rather is when an individual or an entity have committed an action or is going to commit an action. And the debate is not about the technicalities of how this technology is going to work. Rather, the debate becomes about whether the outcome or the impact of this actor's action is going to be insidious to him or them, or beneficial to them, and beneficial to them within themselves and their collateral as well. So let's talk a little bit about framing in this debate, right? So the direction of this debate, since this doesn't exist in the real world, the direction of this debate can shift with how prop mechanizes their case, right? On how this technology is actually going to work, right? So for example, prop has to state how many times you can use this technology, whether you can use it once, twice, or whether you can use it an unlimited amount of times, whether this technology is going to be holistic, whether this technology is going to vary throughout the day, whether it depends on the mood the person is, and then what characteristics make up the definition of love. And since it's an actor motion, the most important clashes do not, again like I said before, do not necessarily concern the technicalities of this technology, and getting into like very back and forth heated debate over the nitty-gritties may dilute the debate and waste valuable time from the important clashes. However, in a motion like this, the opposition is likely to oppose what you're saying with their own counterfactual, depending on how this technology is going to work. And when they do that, you obviously have to defend yours, otherwise the edge is going to buy their counterfactual more if they make more sense. So you need to constantly defend yours, and it's going to become inevitable that this debate becomes a bit technical as well, right? But a more beneficial burden for prop to take when framing this debate is to show that all successful relationships are built on love, and how love is the sole reason for things like mutual trust, understanding, respect, and all of that, right? And the ability to get along, amicability, right? And prop has to show that these three things that I mentioned and more, these characteristics, are all contingent on the concept of love, and without love these things cannot exist. Therefore a relationship crumbles without love in the first place. Now why is this helpful to you? It's helpful because it helps mitigate what op potentially might say, right? Op could potentially make an argument about how love is not a good metric to measure a relationship and how to measure a committed relationship, and there are other factors, characteristics that are exclusive to the concept of love, which makes a successful relationship, right? So this helps mitigate that potential argument that will inevitably come out of a good opposition, right? In framing, prop has to state why people are likely to take this test. Because if people are unlikely to take this test, then this motion is null and void. So prop does have the burden to prove, or rather to show, that a lot of people are likely to take this test. Otherwise, even their impacts are going to be negligible, right? One, you can say that people are likely to take this test. One, because we humans are naturally curious creatures, right? That when something exists, you really you want to test that, to do that, right? It's your natural curiosity as a human. And two, another level of analysis to that is when you see other people around you, let's say your friends, your relatives taking the test and getting high scores. Let's say your friend gets an 80%, and so you will be naturally inclined to want to take that test yourself, because you want to seek validation from your friends. And now this thing is even compounded even more by things like social media, because when people post their high and low scores of their relationship, you will naturally want to see and evaluate yourself and evaluate your relationship, because this sort of media is highly influential right now, and you want that validation as well from the people around you, right? And the last bit of framing of the fact that people are likely to take this test is likely to be agreed by op as well, because that does help to show from on their side, it does help to show that a lot of people taking this test is going to be very harmful for those actors. So let's look at certain potential arguments for the proposition, right? I think the most intuitive argument is that now on props world, you will have better relationships, and whatever you do now from that point that you take this test will be an informed decision. So you can say, and this is how I'd analyze this argument, on op, when you get into a relationship, you trust the person when they say they love you. You had to forego some of your preferences. Example, you had to sacrifice your time and energy to be with this person who you believe really loved you and really cared for you, and you forewent some of your preferences, like going abroad and getting a better degree, or studying for something else, furthering or bettering your life. You forewent that to spend time with this individual under the pretense that this person really did love you, right? But in reality, right, these people were likely to have manipulate you and exploit your goodness, right? So an example, like people like, I don't know, gold diggers are a certain example. But what's exclusive on prop is that you have the exclusive benefit of this technology, right? So when you view this technology and it shows that these people don't really love you, it gives you options that you wouldn't have had if this technology didn't exist. One, it gives you the opportunity to now talk and communicate with your partner and try to come to a consensus or come to an understanding if there is a low score, because you're likely to do this because you've been in a long and committed relationship. You can you can set the parameters of what long is. I'd say long would be around a minimum of relationship of 5 years, right? So a minimum relationship of 5 years. So you likely want to go and talk to your partner and come to a consensus and an understanding and communicate to say that you took this test and whether there's any issue in the relationship, and talk it out, right? It creates discourse that wouldn't exist if not for this technology. And two, it gives you an opportunity to self-reflect and leave this toxic person. Now, let's say the person was manipulating you. The only thing that that made you stay was the fact that you believed that they loved you, and you believed that they had the your best interest in their heart. But now with this technology, you can reflect upon yourself and look at things in a more negative light about this person, and make connections of certain shady things that individual has done, right? It allows you to reflect and see a more comprehensive understanding of this certain situation, and it allows you to leave this toxic person, a benefit that doesn't exist because this technology doesn't exist, right? So what you can do on prop is you can concede, right, that on prop you are less likely to have more relationships. So you'll have fewer relationships, but these fewer relationships will be better relationships, and that is the trade-off. And that trade-off is fine, because on prop you eliminate the most toxic relationships that exist in society, and the most manipulative. And you can also say that the individuals leaving will be much more happy. So the people with high scores are likely to continue their relationships and be even happier, and to the people with low scores now are more happy than they would have been staying in that toxic relationship when they leave, right? And on a scale of happiness, if you use a weighing metric, you say that prop now has the greater average utility. So let's look at the opposition. What kind of arguments could you run, right? But before I get into the arguments, I think the most strategic thing that opposition can do is to respond to whatever framing that prop brings out, to mitigate whatever they are saying, or to challenge how this technology is really going to look like pragmatically, right? So the best thing for opposition to say is that it is likely that this technology isn't going to be an overall holistic thing, right? And it's likely to practically show you how much love a person has for you at the time that you took the test, right? So let's say you had an argument and you take with your partner, and you take the test like right after that, it is likely to show a lower score, because your love for you at that moment would be less, because you are slightly angry or slightly annoyed by what just transpired. But if you take the test at a different time, let's say where you both had a good day, and you both had a good day and good communication and a fruitful day, it is likely to show a higher percentage, let's say 80%. But the issue is, you're going to view this technology only at a specific time. And because love is not a rigid thing, it is it fluctuates a lot, it is highly variable, it becomes a terrible metric to judge how much a person actually cares about their partner, right? Because it's such a fluid thing. And it is a terrible metric to judge how successful a relationship actually is based on love. So therefore you challenge the very framing that proposition gives you. The other thing you can say as op is to respond to props framing if they bring it up. Even if they don't bring it up, you'd have to say that, look, not all people, or rather the characteristics of a healthy relationship, are exclusive from love, right? So mutual respect, trust, all of those things, amicability, all of those things are mutually exclusive from love, right? And love is not the sole determiner of a good and healthy relationship, right? Because, for example, you might not love someone as much anymore, but you may stay in a relationship with them with healthy communication for the sake of your kids, right? So yeah, that is how you challenge propositions framing. And now let's look at the potential arguments that you could run as opposition. I think there are more constructives on opposition than in proposition in this debate. So let's look at the first one. Look, the first argument is the unrealistic expectations that you will now have from your partner if you get a higher score, right? Let's assume now that the score that you get, the score that your partner gets of you is like, they love you like 80 to 90%, right? So you take the test, your partner gets a high score. Now you will suddenly have unrealistic expectations from them. That since they love you, they always have to, treat you treat you a certain way, in a very loving way. You will always wait for their validation, and when they don't give you that validation, you will start getting things like stress, things like anxiety. You will constantly start doubting yourself and doubt whether you've done something wrong, because you took the test and you know that your partner now supposedly loves you very much, and when they don't give you the response that you want and the response that you think is loving in your own head, that will start creating insecurity in your own head, right? So you're going to live in a cycle of anxiety and insecurity and think, oh, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Why isn't this person responding the way that in a loving way, right? And then you are naturally inclined to start blaming yourself, right? You start because that is what you expect. So if they don't give you what you expect, you start blaming yourself, thinking that you are the problem and you create a certain problem, right? So an example would be, in reality, they may just be tired, but your perception is that they don't love you anymore, or that you've done something wrong, right? And in extreme cases, you may even start to suspect things like affairs, cheating, and you may, constantly make them, you may try to force them to take the test to validate yourself, right? To make yourself feel better, and all of these things create tensions in what could be maybe not a very loving relationship, but a healthy relationship, and that creates an unhealthy environment and furthers these toxic relationships that exist, right? And let's assume that you get a lower score, right? That is also problematic, and you can use the same examples to justify this. Once you get a low score, you will constantly try to seek validation, right? And then when you get a low score, you and your friends around you and people on social media get high scores, you start thinking that you are the problem. You'll doubt yourself. You'll blame yourself. You'll see that it will affect your mental state when other people are getting different results than what you got, right? The second thing that you can run is how now once you make this decision, it's going to affect your future relationships, right? So let's assume you use this technology and you decide to leave this toxic person, or you leave this relationship, right? You are now likely going to be afraid to get into any sort of long-term commitment or long-term relationships, right? Because you're going to have a general distrust towards people and a general distrust towards commitment, because you're scared that when you take that test again, that person isn't going to love you, right? Because people want to be loved, and when you aren't necessarily as loved, it really affects your mental state, right? So you're likely, instead of getting into long-term healthy commitments, going to look for things like short-term pleasure. Example, things like lust, hookups, one night stands, instead of trying to trust an individual and create a healthy relationship with them in the future. What happens is it creates a more distrustful society. It also creates a more lonely society, right? Because like we agreed on, a lot of people are going to take this test, right? So at the end of the day, what's going to happen? When you take it on a weighing matrix, the average utility of people who leave relationships are going to be lower in the future, and the people who are going to be in relationships are going to be lower as well, because of that analysis of self-blaming and validation, right? So those are the potential arguments that you can run on opposition. And yeah, that pretty much ends this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned something from it.